Started with our solid waste meeting. Today's date is October 7, 2025. The time is 11 a.m. In attendance are Commissioners Eberline, Duncan, and Matari. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Are there any changes to the agenda? Hearing none. Public comment. Anyone like to speak? Hearing none. We'll go into our first item. It's Projects 2025 discussion. We have the Leachate treatment pilot, the Phase E3 construction, and the closure, turf, and VersaCap engineering design. We have our director, John Phillips.
Good morning, Commissioners. JP for the record. This is your quarterly solid waste update. This presentation is designed to keep you informed while also giving you a brief overview of the many key aspects within the solid waste department. As I go through this agenda, feel free to stop me at any time if you have any specific questions, Bruce or Commissioners. I'll go beyond what you described in the beginning. I'll just continue through, but like I said, feel free to stop me. So starting with those projects of 2025 that Bruce listed, beginning with the Leachate treatment pilot update, I always give a brief overview for the public that's listening in case they haven't been clued into the last several meetings. So some of this may be a little redundant. Leachate is considered an industrial wastewater and it can be difficult to treat. As a brief overview, the department was notified that our regional POTW, Harbs, and Hayden would no longer accept the leachate, the excess leachate that we had unless it was pre-treated to remove things like PFAS, PCBs, and some total dissolved solids. Because of that, Kootenai County solicited other local POTWs, namely Hayden and Post Falls, for other requirements they may have so they could have some input on the requirements we would need to meet for pre-treatment. Kootenai County Solid Waste worked with Jacobs Engineering as well as Dynatech Systems out of New Jersey to finally come up with some treatment equipment, and eventually a PO was issued for a full-scale pilot, and the system was delivered, installed, and ready to go this past May of 2025. So fast forward to today. The pilot system's now been fully operational for nearly a 4-month period. It's been processing leachate at a rate of approximately 10 to 14,000 gallons per day that's produced clean wastewater or clean water. The system was designed to treat up to 35,000 gallons per day, but we are actually running a much more concentrated liquid through it because we're running material from the Mister Basin that has evaporated much of the free water, so it's concentrated the material and it's a little bit more difficult to treat. The clean water coming out of the system was recently tested, and those results were given to Harbs. It was preliminarily confirmed based on those results that the water quality does meet their standards and for pretreatment and ultimately plant delivery. This is great news for our project, and we do plan to test haul that material very soon. The landfill's pretty busy right now, and I'll get into that right at the moment, but we do plan on in the next month or so hauling that material with one truck in the beginning just to make sure it doesn't impact the wastewater treatment plant's other operations. And then we'll try to hit them with multi-trucks after that. If it looks like the water's fine for their plant and doesn't impact them, we'll haul with 3 or 4 water trucks at a time to simulate a heavy haul in the spring and then make sure that we're not impacting their plant. So currently we've processed about 1.4 million gross gallons of wastewater. About 700,000 of that is clean. About 700,000 of that is what they call reject. The reject we either haul back to the landfill or we've put back in the pond based on engineer recommendation. So currently we're putting it back in the landfill, but it's producing about 10,000 gallons a day of that reject water. So Solid Waste Department will hold off on making any kind of recommendation for this purchase until we're actually through hauling to Harbs, make sure it doesn't impact that plant. At that point, I'll likely come back to the board with a recommendation for purchase. That's what it appears to be at this moment. But again, I just want to make sure before I make any kind of recommendation. Any questions about the leachate pilot?
Questions? No.
Moving on to landfill phase E3, I really wish I was here to tell you this project was complete at this point. We have very little left, but as you know, a new area of the landfill known as landfill phase E3 expansion went out to bid in December of 2023. Selling Construction was awarded that bid, and they virtually completed the entire job last December/January. There was just a few things left, some erosion control measures, which they did complete. There was a failed VFD that I mentioned, so a variable frequency drive that they had difficulty obtaining. They did obtain that. They just delivered it. In the meantime, we actually found another VFD and had that installed so the system would be operational. What they do owe us still is training. So there's a really minor training on how you operate the pump station in that phase E3 for the leachate, the controls for that pump station. That is scheduled 2 days from now, so I anticipate that's going to wrap up this week. So,
how big is that VFD?
the one that was replaced, it's not real big. I think it controls, I want to say it's about a 20 horsepower pump. So it's not a huge VFD. So, but we were able to obtain that. I think you gave me a recommendation that the last one, Mark, I think it was a Yaka something. I can't remember the brand of it, Yakasawa. We looked into that, and United Crown was able to produce a VFD that would substitute what was needed so that we were able to get it operational. So thanks for that input. Any questions about that E3? Okay, and the one thing is that, so the monies have been carried forward for FY26 to complete the project. There's not a lot left out. There's $17,000 and some change outstanding. I don't believe we will owe all of that. There's some little bit of bartering we're gonna do back and forth to probably bring the bill down slightly because of the delay, so. So moving on to closure turf and VersaCap engineering design. This remains a quickly approaching project. So before the solid waste department can put garbage into that new E3 cell, we want to close certain areas of the old landfill to minimize infiltration of stormwater to create more leachate. We want to minimize that because we have limited capacity for holding leachate. We also that this project, once it occurs, would minimize the escapement of landfill gas and minimize odors in the area. So in this fiscal year, the solid waste department has planned to have Parametrics Engineering put together bid specifications for this capping project. Closure funds were already budgeted for this, so it won't impact our budget. On August 18th, I should say, 2025, a professional services agreement, as you are aware, was signed with Parametrics Engineering for design and future construction work related to this project. So currently we are working with Parametrics and they are in the design phase. I'll continue to give the BOCC quarterly updates as this project unfolds. Any questions about that one?
Questions? No?
Okay, so moving on to Section 2, Fighting Creek Landfill, beginning with operations. So the garbage volumes are typical as for this time of year. The landfill's been receiving an average of approximately 750 tons per day of municipal solid waste. Landfill crew and the environmental techs have been doing a great job on keeping up with those daily operations, placement of cover, maintenance of the cover slopes, and also minimization of odors. In addition to these normal duties this time of year, the majority of the crew is largely focused on installing stormwater control features and in advance of this upcoming wetter part of the year. So plastic sheeting, sandbags, and erosion control blankets are actively being installed at this time. This work is primarily occurring to maintain environmental compliance with clean stormwater requirements while also minimizing erosion control, the potential for erosion control, and minimizing that leachate production we talked about. Any questions with operations? So moving on to landfill gas system, overall that gas system continues to work very well. Crews continued installing horizontal landfill gas collection devices, digging them in just ahead of refuse placement to minimize odors while performing that necessary work. Currently we're collecting about 1,300 standard cubic feet of landfill gas within that system, so it's gone down about 100 standard cubic feet per minute recently, but that's kind of a seasonal fluctuation that we typically see. Approximately 1,000 standard cubic feet per minute of that is used by the gas to energy plant to produce electricity. The balance is combusted via landfill gas flare at the site just to destroy the methane. As a reminder, KRE, the company that owns the gas to energy plant, at the last update I mentioned was interested in possibly installing an additional generator for electricity production at Fighting Creek. KRE indicated they may potentially desire to reopen that contract if they invest in that generator. I haven't heard anything in the past couple months from them in regard to this, so since my previous update, nothing's changed. I'll keep my board liaison posted if I'm recontacted about this possibility. Any questions about the gas system there? Alrighty, moving on to transfer station operations. So transfer station traffic and waste volumes are also normal for this time of year. Haven't seen any big fluctuations. Our crews have been doing a great job at both transfer stations with the operations being relatively trouble-free this past summer. Very few complaints. Ramsey demo pit, I do want to give you a heads up. So there was an area behind Ramsey that was excavated when they covered the landfill clear back pre-1993. That hole we have filled over those many years with concrete and clean dirt, and that has reached interim capacity. So it's reached a preliminary grade of roughly what we want for trailer storage in the back behind Ramsey and for future development. However, there's still about 1 to 2 years worth of space that we can go up above and kind of bench back so that we can have an additional staging area up a little bit higher. However, I'm really going to need to have an engineer take a quick look at this and just confirm the remaining capacity, because we do have future plans for transfer station expansion, and I want to make sure we don't put too much concrete and dirt in that area and then have the need to excavate it, to make room that we need. So there's no point in doing that. So I'm really going to need somebody to take a look at the amount of space left, look at the grade plan that we've roughed out, and the need for also a stormwater swale in that area, which is likely will be needed for pavement runoff, because it'll likely be paved in the future. So we want to make sure we just don't overfill and make sure we keep our eye on that. So it's very important we leave enough room for those future operations. Once this area is filled, our fee schedule will likely need to be adjusted. I would, of course, bring that to the board for consideration. Citizens will likely either need to take that type of material in the future, past that couple of years, to somewhere else, such as maybe a central premix if somebody accepted concrete, or it may be more expensive to dispose of that with us if it was to end up in our landfill, just because we don't really want concrete in the landfill. And the thing is, pushing concrete chunks into our trailers is really hard on the trailer. So it's more expensive to dump what they call mixed demo at our transfer stations right now because of that potential for damage. So we'll look at options for the citizens before we get to that point. So moving on to the new quick drop area, so the public area that we designed for the transfer station, where people could go in and out and dump small loads of garbage. That new small load public drop off area has been very well received by the public and has averaged 150 to 200 vehicles per day over the past several months. It started out a little slow in the beginning, but that's about where it's ended up these past couple months. Transfer station traffic volumes typically fall off this time of year, so as the weather changes. So because of this, the department will plan to seasonally close that small load drop-off area because we don't want to have to snow plow that. We don't really want leaves and things to be blowing all over as the winds pick up and it's rainier up there and that kind of thing. So we'll plan to reopen that in the spring once the traffic picks back up. So after October 15th, we'll start really watching the weather. We'll keep it open as long as we can. We considered putting leaves up there, but because most people like to save their bags and they just dump them, they'd probably just blow everywhere. So it's likely, because of the reduced traffic, we just put people through the transfer station again. Any questions about any of that? Okay. So moving on to personnel recruitment. We currently only have one full-time position open, and that is a heavy equipment mechanic. We have not received many qualified applicants over the past 5+ months. While this position's been open, I've been working with HR on ways to increase interest in this position. We did recently increase the wages that we're advertising up to the full steps 1 through 5 at the grade 8, which works out to $25.73 to $30.58 per hour. We had been advertising steps 1 through 4, but hadn't been attracting many applicants, so we did bump that up a little. It's my understanding that HR did reevaluate this position in 2024 and reported that this position is being paid correctly according to the most recent wage study information. However, I've requested that this be looked at again just because of the complete lack of applicants. On the flip side, I don't want it to sound all doom and gloom. It's only one position. Being down only one full-time position in our department is very good. And I do want to thank the BOCC for being able to follow through over these past many years with the pay plan and look at COLAs and take that seriously, because we're only down one. And so that's pretty darn good. So I'm thankful for that. Any questions about recruitment? No? Okay. So moving on to rural site operations, Sunshine Recycling has continued to generally do a pretty good job out there of hauling the refuse as required from our rural sites. We didn't receive any complaints this past Labor Day. weekend, which is surprising. And so Sunshine did a great job keeping those sites cleaned as needed and picked up. Kootenai County Solid Waste staff will continue to stay in contact with Sunshine Disposal and continue to remind them of, as we see sites that are too full, if they need to haul, we'll stay right on that and keep in contact with them. Overall, those sites have been looking pretty good, but the levels of abuse have somewhat picked up. We do have a little bit less sheriff's patrol than we had in previous years, and I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but most of our rural residential users do an excellent job following the rules. But the solid waste department, we do continue to send a full-time employee out there to pick up anything that people leave on the ground, even though we have sites at all the sites that say do not leave things on the ground, still occurs pretty regularly. Just a quick reminder to the public, we do need your help to keep these rural collection sites clean. Please don't place items outside of the containers. Any large items such as furniture or appliance are not meant for these containers and are required to be delivered to a transfer station. In most cases, it's free to dispose of these items at the transfer station. Also, as a reminder, the rules are posted within a red section on a large white sign at each one of these rural collection sites, and I do recommend that users from time to time review those rules. It's easy to forget that we're really not supposed to load the dumpsters with brush, not supposed to throw couches in there and washers and dryers and things like that, or pallets, but those do happen. So if people could just review that, I'd appreciate it, and I thank them in advance for their cooperation. I appreciate the public taking a look at that. The good news is new surveillance cameras are on the way at some of our rural sites. We're excited to announce that there will be new surveillance cameras, and they're ready to be installed at Kid Island Bay and Sunup Bay. These cameras will record all activity at those sites 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And the Sheriff's Department will be supplied with a direct link to remotely access these cameras. Signs will be posted to notify the public of the active video recording. It is our hope that these new cameras will help deter some of that abuse and to some degree reduce these incidents that I'm describing at these sites. The anticipated go live date for these cameras is expected to be very soon, by the end of October of this month. Any questions about those cameras? Okay. Moving on to Wolf Lodge property update and future development. So as you know, we purchased some property in that Wolf Lodge Bay area. It was not the restaurant, but it's near the restaurant, with the intention of the construction of a future staffed rural collection site. This site will allow the future consolidation of some of those other sites in the area and give us better control by having it be a staffed facility so we can monitor what's going in. Kootenai County Solid Waste and JUB have worked closely together to come up with a suitable design and ultimately obtain that necessary special use permit for the future construction and operation of that site. So we're good to go there. And currently, JUB is still working on the necessary contractual documents, plans, and specifications so we can put that out this late fall or early winter of 2025. So hopefully construction next spring. I'll keep the board posted as things progress related to this project. Moving on to patrol and public education. So the Sheriff's Department continues to do a pretty good job patrolling and educating the public at these rural collection facilities. And we ask the public adhere to those posted rules like I mentioned. Commercial disposal is not allowed at these sites, and the Sheriff's Department may ticket for issues related to commercial disposal or people littering, like placing items on the ground. Kootenai County Solid Waste wants to continue offering these convenient system, these rural collection sites, into the future for our citizens, but the future of these sites do depend on compliance with the posted rules and regulations. And we'll continue working with the Sheriff's Department on ways to improve security, such as with these cameras, and minimize abuse with the rural collection system. That concludes the section about rural. I'll move on to solid waste statistics unless there's any questions. Okay, this is a little out of order compared to the way it's written on your sheet, but I'd like to give you a quick rundown. So the Ramsey Transfer Station, keep in mind these figures exclude the new quick drop area. So we pulled out some of these statistics. So it's a little skewed. So the customer site visits at the transfer station itself, again, not including that public drop-off area, was 239,999 visits from January through August of 2025. That's down 4.6%. But if you figured in that public drop-off area, we're actually up about 2.8%. So I'll just preface it with that. The tonnage is also down, but including the tonnage from those sites is down 0.3%. So it's almost flat. Prairie Transfer Station Customer site visits are up 4%, 5,785 more customer site visits in 2025, and the tonnage is up 0.04%, really 0%. It's really flat. Fighting Creek landfill is also fairly flat at only up 1%, 0.9%, with 1,382 more tons. And that might look weird because it looks like, well, the transfer station's tonnage isn't up that much, but we have diverted waste to the landfill. So we have contractors with large loads hauled directly to the landfill, and we've been putting more and more of that down there. So 4,546 tons were directly hauled to the landfill in 2025 so far. Looking at that rural collection site, now that is an area that's up, but I think there's, in reality, we have more people living in our rural areas or being in those rural areas more of the year. Some of those seasonal homes are becoming permanently occupied. So our customer visits at Athol and Chilco are up 4.6%, and in the same time frame, and the tonnage is up 7.5%. So slightly bigger loads going in there, but not hugely up. Look at the Ramsey Express drop-off area, and this is probably the most interesting. May through June, we had 18,346 customers that used that site or visits. To the tons were only 439 tons. So when you run the math on that, that's only about a 48-pound average load. So that is great for the citizens and for Kootenai County Solid Waste to get that 18,346 vehicles out of the lines. Makes it faster for everybody with those bigger loads and makes it faster for these customers to get in and out. Like I said, very well received. So I'm pretty proud to be able to offer that to the citizens. With that, if there's no questions, that would conclude my solid waste update. Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions?
Nope.
Well, as always, keep up the great work.
Thank you.
You run that department extremely well, so thank you.
Well, it takes an army, and I have a pretty good army.
Yeah, well, you make sure that the Army is doing what they're supposed to do, and so that's where your credit is given.
Keep the Army happy.
I will try. I appreciate it.
Okay, well, with nothing else, I'll move on to public comment. Anyone like to speak? Hearing nothing, 11:22, meeting adjourned. Thank you.